It was supposed to be an ordinary, quiet night. One of those nights where nothing remarkable happens, where the world keeps moving unnoticed while most people sleep. But in the early hours before dawn, that calm was violently shattered. A young woman vanished from her own home, not from a dark alley, not from a dangerous street, but from a place where she should have been safest. The house sat quietly in a college neighborhood surrounded by other student rentals. Inside, the lights were on. The front door stood wide open, and the person who lived there was gone. At around 1:30 a.m., the house had been full of life. Roommates gathered their things, preparing to head out for a party. Laughter echoed briefly through the hallway. Invitations were made, but one person chose to stay behind. She had studying to finish, responsibilities she refused to put aside. So while the others left, she stayed home alone. By the time her roommates returned several hours later, something felt immediately wrong. The door was still open. The lights were still on. The house looked untouched. No signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, no chaos. And yet, she was nowhere to be found. Her phone wasn't answering. Her car was missing. The silence inside the house felt heavy, unnatural. At first, they tried to explain it away. Maybe she had stepped out unexpectedly. Maybe something urgent had come up. But as the minutes turned into hours, concern transformed into fear. Then came the moment that changed everything. When police were contacted, officers shared a chilling revelation. Earlier that same morning, they had responded to a report nearly a mile away. A resident had been awakened by the sound of gunshots, followed by a scream so terrifying it froze her in place. When officers arrived, they found the body of a young woman lying on the ground. No identification. No phone. No wallet. When a photo was shown to one of the roommates, recognition came instantly. The missing student from the quiet house was already dead. The timeline was horrifyingly short. Somewhere between studying late at night and the early morning hours, she had been taken. Within just a few hours, her life was violently ended. The question that now haunted investigators was simple and terrifying. How does someone disappear from their own home without a trace? To understand why this crime shook an entire nation, you first have to understand who Eve Carson was. Not just how she died, but how she lived. Eve Carson was not an ordinary student. From a young age, she stood out as driven, disciplined, and deeply committed to helping others. Born on November 19, 1985, she showed early signs of leadership that would follow her throughout her life. In high school, Eve balanced an extraordinary list of achievements. She served as vice president of the student council. She volunteered at a nursing home. She worked with abused teens. She served as a congressional page. She even assisted in a stem cell research lab, all while still attending classes. Most teenagers struggle to manage one responsibility. Eve managed all of them. Her academic excellence earned her admission to the University of North Carolina, where she pursued a demanding double major in political science and biology. It wasn't just her grades that set her apart, it was her presence. She became deeply involved in student leadership, quickly rising into prominent roles across campus organizations. But Eve didn't limit her ambition to lecture halls and meeting rooms. She taught science to elementary school students. She volunteered internationally, spending time in Ecuador assisting doctors, studying abroad in Cuba, and joining a research team in Egypt. Everywhere she went, she left an impression of compassion, intelligence, and purpose. Friends described her as focused yet warm, ambitious but never arrogant. She believed in building a meaningful future, not just for herself, but for others. By her final year of college, Eve had already secured a job offer with a major company. Her future was no longer uncertain. It was unfolding exactly as she had planned. That's what made her disappearance so baffling she had no history of risky behavior. No known enemies? No reason to leave in the middle of the night. No explanation for why her door was left open or why she vanished without telling anyone she wasn't running from something. She was taken. As news of her death spread across campus, shock turned into grief and grief into fear. Students questioned their safety. Parents demanded answers. The sense of security that once defined the university shattered. Overnight. Eve Carson was more than a victim. She was a symbol of promise, and her brutal death marked the beginning of an investigation that would expose something far darker than anyone imagined. With Eve Carson's identity confirmed, investigators immediately turned their focus to reconstructing her final hours. The timeline was narrow, terrifyingly narrow. Eve had last been seen alive at approximately 1:30 a.m. alone in her home. By around 5 a.m., her body was discovered less than a mile away. Somewhere in that brief window, her life had been stolen. Detectives began inside the house. Nothing appeared broken. No signs of forced entry. No overturned furniture. Whatever happened had been swift and controlled. But something was clearly missing. Eve's wallet was gone. Her credit cards were gone. And most concerning of all, her phone had vanished. Her bedroom told a quiet but important story. Eve's computer was still on. Forensic technicians examined the device and made a critical discovery. The computer showed activity until approximately 3:30 a.m. That meant Eve had remained inside her home for nearly 2 hours after her roommates left. She hadn't stepped out voluntarily. She hadn't gone anywhere willingly. Something or someone had come to her. Medical examiners delivered another key finding. There were no signs of sexual assault. This ruled out one of the most common motives investigators initially consider. Attention shifted quickly toward robbery. Phone records revealed Eve's final signal had pinged near a highway outside the city. The phone itself was never recovered. Detectives believed it had been deliberately discarded, likely tossed into wooded terrain to prevent tracking. Then came the first tangible break. Eve's car was located, abandoned several miles from her home. The vehicle was immediately processed for fingerprints, DNA, and trace evidence. Inside, investigators found no obvious answers, but the discovery confirmed what detectives had feared. Eve hadn't driven herself. Someone else had taken control. As word spread across the university, fear intensified. Students flooded police lines with tips, unfamiliar cars, strange figures, unusual noises. But despite the volume of information, nothing directly connected to the killer. At least not yet. The case remained silent until detectives followed the money. Investigators examined Eve's bank records, hoping to track any unusual activity. What they found immediately caught their attention. Just 8 minutes after Eve's computer went inactive, 2 separate ATM withdrawals were made from her account, totaling $700. Additional attempts were made but blocked by daily withdrawal limits. The timing was too precise to ignore. The ATM was located on the opposite side of town. Detectives rushed to obtain the surveillance footage, and what they saw sent a chill through the investigation. The video showed a man sitting in the driver's seat of Eve's car, calmly using her bank card. In the back seat, another figure appeared, motionless, partially visible. Investigators feared the worst. That person could have been Eve. The image quality was poor. Faces were blurred. Details were limited. Still, this was the first visual proof that Eve had been forced to travel with her killer. The withdrawals didn't stop there. Eve's card was used repeatedly across multiple ATMs throughout the city. Most of those machines lacked cameras, leaving detectives frustrated. But on March 7th, nearly 2 days after the murder, Another transaction attempt triggered a breakthrough at 12:30 a.m. Eve's card was used at a 24-hour convenience store in a neighboring town. This ATM had a functioning security camera. When detectives reviewed the footage, they were stunned. The person using the card was not the same man seen in the earlier video. This discovery changed everything. Investigators now believed at least 2 individuals were involved. Whether accomplices or people passing the card between them, it was clear Eve's murder was not the act of alone. Offender. Police released both images to the public. The response was overwhelming. Tips poured in. Names were suggested. Leads were chased for days. Nothing solid emerged. Then, on March 12th, one anonymous phone call cut through the noise and pointed investigators toward a suspect they could no longer ignore. The anonymous tip led detectives to a 21-year-old man named Dario Atwater. His name immediately raised alarms. At such a young age, Atwater already had a long criminal history: robberies, assaults, drug offenses, and repeated probation violations. Even more troubling, he was scheduled to appear in court just days after Eve's murder for illegally carrying a firearm while on probation. When investigators compared Atwater's mugshots to the convenience store ATM footage, the resemblance was undeniable. Police moved quickly. Atwater was taken into custody and questioned, but he denied any involvement. Still, the surveillance footage was enough to hold him. As detectives dug deeper into his phone records, another name repeatedly surfaced: Lawrence Lovett, a 17-year-old with his own growing criminal record. When police pulled Lovett's mugshot, they froze. He matched the man seen driving Eve's car in the earlier ATM footage. Unlike Atwater, Lovett did not surrender peacefully. He barricaded himself inside his home, forcing police to call in a SWAT team. After a tense standoff, he was arrested. Like Atwater, he denied everything. But technology told a different story. Cell phone data placed both men near Eve's neighborhood during the exact window of her disappearance, despite neither of them living nearby. Investigators now believe the truth was terrifyingly simple. Eve had been randomly targeted. Prosecutors laid out their theory. Atwater and Lovett were driving around that night looking for someone to rob. When they saw Eve alone in her home, they seized the opportunity. Armed with guns, they forced their way inside, kidnapped her, and drove her from ATM to ATM, draining her account. After hitting the withdrawal limit, they made a final decision: one Eve would never survive, facing the death penalty. Atwater made a deal. He confessed. Atwater admitted that they killed Eve because she had seen their faces. He described how she begged for her life, how she promised she wouldn't tell anyone, and just before they shot her, Eve asked them to pray with her. They didn't. In April 2010, Dario Atwater stood trial. His confession, the surveillance footage, and the digital evidence sealed his fate. Thanks to his plea deal, the death penalty was removed. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years before being led away. Atwater turned to Eve's parents and apologized, admitting he deserved the punishment. Lawrence Lovett chose a different path. He went to trial in December 2011. Prosecutors presented Atwater's confession, cell phone records, ATM footage, and witness testimony. The jury found Lovett guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison. But the case wasn't over. In 2013, an appeals court overturned Lovett's sentence, citing rulings against mandatory life sentences for juveniles. He was granted a new trial. This time, Lovett showed little remorse, insisting he wasn't the monster people believed him to be. The judge disagreed. Lovett was again sentenced to life in prison. Eve Carson's murder sent shockwaves far beyond her university. Her case directly inspired new legislation in North Carolina, strengthening laws against violent and gang-related crimes. A scholarship was created in her name, and a memorial garden now stands on campus, a quiet place of reflection for a life. Taken too soon, Eve was more than a victim, she was a leader. A dreamer. A young woman who believed in helping others. Even in her final moments, her story remains a reminder of how fragile safety can be, and why remembering the victims matters more than ever. When the trial began, the courtroom atmosphere was heavy with grief and tension. Lauren Ashley's family sat silently in the front row, surrounded by friends and supporters, while Nathan Fuya entered escorted by officers, his once promising future already erased. The prosecution made one thing clear. From the opening statement, this was not a crime of confusion or mental collapse. It was a deliberate act of control and rage. Prosecutors walked the jury step by step through the timeline of July 3, 2011. They presented phone records showing repeated calls from Nathan to Lauren before she left work. Surveillance footage from the mall confirmed Lauren was speaking to him on the phone as she exited. The state argued that Nathan pressured Lauren into coming over. Knowing his parents would be away, the garage became the focal point of the trial. Crime scene. Investigators testified about the blood evidence found on the garage floor, the doorknobs, and inside the sinks. Experts explained that the blood patterns were consistent with a violent struggle, not an accident. Photographs showed signs of attempted cleanup, suggesting awareness and guilt rather than confusion. The medical examiner's testimony was devastating. Lauren had suffered strangulation before the fatal wound to her neck. Defensive injuries on her hands proved she fought for her life. The examiner confirmed she remained alive for several minutes after the attack. Fully aware of what was happening, then came the evidence trail. Mud from Nathan's shoes matched the wetland where Lauren's body was found. Blood on his clothing matched Lauren's DNA. Cell phone tower data placed Nathan moving between key locations: his home, the beach parking lot, and the marsh. The defense countered with their insanity argument. Psychiatrists testified that Nathan suffered from severe depression, compounded by head injuries and substance abuse. They claimed he experienced a dissociative episode and was unable to understand the wrongfulness of his actions, but the prosecution dismantled that claim. They pointed to Nathan's behavior after the murder: hiding evidence, cleaning blood, changing shoes, disposing of the vehicle, and lying to police. These were not the actions of someone detached from reality. They were the actions of someone trying to escape consequences. The jury listened carefully and slowly. The defense's argument began to fall apart. After weeks of testimony, the case went to the jury. For Lauren's family, the weight was unbearable. Every hour stretched painfully long, filled with memories of the daughter they had lost and the future she would never live. On March 7, 2013, the jury returned. Nathan Fuya was found guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. Nathan showed little reaction. Lauren's parents wept quietly, holding each other as the weight of the moment settled in. Justice had been delivered, but it could never bring their daughter back. Nathan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the mandatory sentence under Massachusetts law at the time. He was just 20 years old when he was led away in handcuffs. His life now permanently defined by the crime he committed. In an unexpected moment, Lauren's father, Malcolm, crossed the courtroom and embraced Nathan's parents. Both families were destroyed, one by loss, the other by shame and grief. It was a powerful reminder that violence leaves no one untouched. In the years that followed, Lauren's parents refused to let her death be meaningless. They founded the Lauren Ashley Memorial Foundation, focusing on art, youth engagement, and awareness around relationship violence. They began speaking publicly, sharing Lauren's story with teenagers across the country, hoping to prevent another tragedy before it happens. But new pain resurfaced in 2024. Massachusetts court ruling changed sentencing laws for offenders under 20, opening the door for potential parole hearings. Lauren's parents now live with the fear that the man who killed their daughter could one day walk free. Still, they continue to fight. Lauren Ashley was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, a performer, and a light in her community. Her life mattered, and her story continues to warn, educate, and protect others. One decision, one moment of obsession, one life stolen forever. If Lauren's story moved you, honor her by staying informed. Subscribe to the channel, share this video, and remember, recognizing warning signs can save lives.